Hi, third grade. So if you remember, I told you that we were going to be having a special guest doing a science experiment with you. And I have that special guest here. Now, I'm going to give you a couple hints and see if you can guess who it is. The same hints I gave you the other day. So he has a beard. And he's also a teacher, but not in Exeter. And his last name also starts with F. And I kind of like him a little. So, my special guest is
Hi, third grade.
Mr. Big. So he is going to do your science experiment with you today. I hope that you enjoy it. Bye.
Hi, third grade. Let's adjust this camera so you can actually see me. I'm a little bit taller than Mrs. Fasik.
I'm tall.
All right, third grade. So, if you guys didn't know, I am an 8th grade science teacher in Reading, so I'm wearing my spirit apparel today. I hope you guys are too for Exeter. But I heard that you guys needed some science lessons, so I thought that I would pop in and give you guys an 8th grade science lesson. But don't worry, it's not too difficult. We'll get through it together, and you guys will learn some 8th grade science and be really prepared and really ahead for later on. So, today we're going to talk about something called density. All right. Now, before I tell you what density is or show you, I'm going to do a little experiment here to see if you can figure it out. So I'm going to go down below my face. You're going to be kind of looking at my belly, but more importantly, I want you to see this cup. So this is an experiment that you can do at home too, but just be sure that you always ask mom, dad, or whoever you're with, ask their permission before you use any of their things. We don't want you to make a mess and have mom or dad get upset, especially not while you're stuck at home with them, right? So we're going to get a cup, and we're going to start with some honey. We'll open up the honey, and I'll have to take the seal off. All right. And we're going to pour our honey right into the bottom of our glass here. And you don't need to measure it out, you just want a layer that you can see. There we go, we've got plenty. So, you can see the honey right down here. Now we're going to bring something else in. One of my personal favorites, some syrup. I'm going to take some syrup and real gently, you're going to put it right on top of the honey. And again, you don't need too much, but you're going to notice something. You can see a difference between the honey and the syrup, right? The syrup is forming its own separate layer right here instead of mixing down here with the honey. Let's keep adding some stuff. Next thing we're going to add is, keeping with the breakfast theme, some milk. Now, when you add the milk, we're going to use a separate tool. We're going to use a little dropper here, because the milk you have to be a little bit more careful with. So we're going to suck it up. Now you can use anything. If you don't have one of these droppers at home, you can just very lightly pour it onto a spoon and put it in that way, or you could use an eyedropper or a syringe or anything like that. So we're going to take our milk and real gently, we're going to put our milk in here too. Perfect. And after we're done with breakfast, of course, we're going to need to clean up a little bit. So our next one is going to be some dish soap. Now, again, we don't need the dropper for this because the soap already has a nice way to pour it out, but you want to pour it right onto the edge, like this, and just pour it out nice and slow. Going to need a good amount of soap to get the layer. There we go. Now you can see over here it's a little bit mixed up, but if I turn it for you, there we go. We can still see the different layers. And there's a little bit of milk sitting on top here. That's okay, that's normal. What we're going to look at right here are the sides. So we can see our honey, our syrup, our milk, and now our soap. And we're going to try adding one last thing. This is some water that I just added some food coloring to, just so that you can see the color difference easily. And this time we're going to use a syringe, but just like before, if you don't have this at home, that's okay. You can use a spoon to pour it on, or the dropper that we used earlier, or anything that'll help you pour it nice and slow. And just like before, we're going to add it real slow, as slow as we can. And there we go. So this created something pretty fun to look at. We've got all of these different layers, right? We've got our honey down here, our syrup in the middle, our milk right above that, then our soap, and now some water on top. Now, third grade, my question for you is, do you know why these things didn't mix together like things usually would when you pour them into each other? Well, the answer is because of density. Now, I don't know if Mrs. Fasig talked too much about this in class, but everything, including all this, everything that you can think of, this table, my hands, my shirt, everything in this cup, it's all made up of really tiny, tiny pieces. All right, so small that we can't even see them. They're called particles. Right, that's a big 8th grade vocabulary word for you. It just means tiny, tiny pieces, particles. So, I'll keep this here on the side so you can still see it. Let's take our whiteboard and talk about what density is and why the particles matter. So, let's draw our cup here. Now, as Mrs. Fasig will tell you, I'm not the best artist, so I'm not going to draw the shape of our cup like it is here. I'm just going to draw a regular cup. All the way down here, our honey is what we call very dense. It's very, very dense. And what that means is that the particles, and I'm just going to draw little circles, the particles inside the honey look something like this. They're super close together and they're really tightly packed together. All right. They can't move around much at all because they're so dense. They're so tightly packed onto one another. It's kind of like when we go on vacation and Mrs. Fasig packs her suitcase. We'll go on vacation for 3 days and she'll pack 17 outfits. Her suitcase is very, very dense. She packed a lot of stuff in there. And the particles, the tiny pieces that make up the honey on the bottom, are very tight together. And then we go up a layer. So let me change colors here. We go up one layer to our syrup here. Now our syrup is still kind of dense, but it's not as dense as the honey. And what that means is the particles, the little pieces, are spread out just a little bit more. So they're still pretty close together. They're not too comfortable, but they're not as close together as down here with our honey. So since they're spread a little bit apart, they're not able to push into the honey because the honey is so tight together, there's no room for this syrup to go down. And that's why they didn't mix with each other. Then if we go up another layer to our milk, I'll change color again. Our milk is going to look something like this. A little bit looser still, okay, but they're still kind of tight together. They don't have a lot of room to move around, but they're still looser than our honey and our syrup. And because these are so tight packed down here, the milk can't go down any further, so it stays here. It stays in this layer here, and it won't mix in. And then we can keep going up. We can go up to our soap, and I'll change my color again. Let's do red. And our soap is going to look something like this. And they're spread out just a little bit more. And then our last one, our water up on top, is going to look something, oop, that's not writing too well, but hopefully you can see it. It's going to look something like that, where they're even more spread out. So, congratulations, you just learned some 8th grade science. So let's recap. What is density? Well, density is how tightly packed together things are or how loose they are. Down here would be something that's really, really dense. Something like Mrs. Fazig's suitcase when we go on vacation. Up here would be something that's not very dense at all. Something like my suitcase when we go on vacation and I only pack 1 extra pair of underwear. There's not a lot of space taken up in my suitcase. All right? More dense, less dense. And we learned that that's why some things won't mix together. Ooh, spin that, there we go. Honey is super dense. It's so dense that the syrup can't push down into it. These particles, these tiny pieces, are so packed together. They're so tight together that this syrup can't move down. And then the milk is a little bit less than the syrup, so it can't push down. And then the soap, a little bit less than the milk. And the water, even less than the soap. That's density. You're prepared for 8th grade. See you 3rd grade. Have fun.